Now, and I'm going to start recording. Okay, so we're recording and we're broadcasting. And I hope the recording is recording to the web. We'll find out after. Should be.
So is Gretchen going to be on tonight?
She should be, and I'm going to also start sharing my screen right now. She's coming. Okay, share screen, and I'm gonna do, here we go. Tell me you can see my screen now.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. That's what I want. That's what we want.
Okay.
And now I need my panelists back.
Ron, it looks like you're muted.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, if at any time you guys see a problem with what I'm sharing on my screen or things aren't coming across properly, please let me know. Hopefully this will go well. Okay, as long as, let's give Gretchen another minute or two. She should be here.
Julia, did you get any of those plans from Tom Hughes that you were waiting for?
Yeah, we did, and I emailed them to you all. I hope you got them, but if not, that's okay. They did not probably go up on the website today, but I did send them to you all by email.
Sorry, I must not have seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there anything on 192 Northern Boulevard in that? Did that come in at all today?
Yeah, I didn't see that one.
No.
I didn't either.
Okay.
They've asked for a continuance.
Yeah, that's the one I was.
Okay.
So I know Gretchen's not here, but since we are recording the meeting,
Gretchen
here?
is on, she's on as an attendee.
oh, she is. Okay, great. Oh, great. I see her. All right, so why don't we go ahead and get started?
Okay, let's get started with the Newburyport Conservation Commission meeting on July 7th, 2020 via Zoom, and this meeting is being recorded. So, first thing is approval of the minutes from June 16th. Anybody have any comments?
Looked fine to me.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. Paul?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, under old and new business, do we have any Plum Island updates?
not have any Plum Island updates. I don't know if anyone else has anything to report on Plum Island, but no, I don't at this time. That's really just a placeholder this week.
When we had the last meeting, it sounded like things were in pretty rough shape and that you were scheduling something with DCR to come in and had anything come of that?
Yeah, we did schedule some work with DCR to roll out the Moby mats and to close off some pathways around the 73rd, 75th Street area. And that's been done. We put up signage and we put up some temporary fencing to keep people out of that space and to direct them to some new pathways. And then the Moby mats were put down on the 69th Street path and the path from the parking lot out to the beach, the one that people use the most, because the boardwalk actually is going to remain closed. There was some discussion about whether or not they could put a temporary ramp and build some temporary steps for people to get down off the end of the boardwalk, but it's just too steep, and they don't want to damage the existing structure by trying to attach things to it or break pieces off of it to let people get around. So that's going to stay as is. So those are sort of some public access updates. But in terms of any kind of dune restoration work being planned, I don't have anything new on that at this point, other than I should say the city has put out is working, I should say, with GZA to develop a proposal to do like a feasibility study for a couple different options of dune restoration and protection in that, again, that 73rd, 75th Street area. So I don't think the contract with GZA has been finalized yet, but Anders was the one who was putting together a proposal for the city on that.
Well, that's not DCR property there, it's city?
It is DCR, well, I should say it used to be DCR property and now it's coming closer to just being city property. It's probably a mixture of both at this point because of how close the erosion has taken us to Reservation Terrace.
Yeah. So is DCR involved in the contract and funding of it, or?
No, we're not getting any help from the state at this point. I don't know that maybe that the mayor is working with the state on something behind the scenes where they'll help fund this, but I don't have any information on that. I can't say one way or another what the level of participation can be from DCR.
Okay. Anything else under old and new business?
I don't have anything at the moment.
Okay. All right, let's move on to certificates of compliance, requests for determinations and requests for minor modifications and requests for extensions. I'm supposed to do that at 7. It's a little early, but I think people who need to be here are here. So let's get Ron Gerton, 1 Spofford Street.
Okay. Let me allow to talk. Okay, there we go.
All right, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting here on behalf of Ron Gerton. You may recall that we filed an NOI for support, and largely it was filed as an NOI because it overlapped into natural heritage land. So we basically had to get it in so we could get the 30-day review rather than having to do an independent MISA review. But basically it was pruning some trees for health, removing 3 trees that were deemed hazards by an arborist. There were this one, and this one here. This is the plan that was included in the notice of intent. Go on to the next
Okay.
next image. So this is one of the stumps down on the river. This is the one that's labeled 9606 on the plan we were just looking at. You can see the interior of the stump. Clearly it was rotten, and clearly the arborist had a point. So that's one of the stumps that was removed. One of the conditions was the stumps needed to be left in place. They could be ground, but the root's not removed because they're in a spot that's kind of holding some of the bank together in between some of the rock outcrop. If we go to the next one. Okay, this is the other of the two trees that are down near the water. And again, you can see the rotten core. Not as bad as the other one, but still pretty bad. And this is the one that's labeled 9607 on that other plan. The other tree, I was unable to get a picture of the stump because it was actually buried in some holly planted on top of it. That is up near the driveway, right up near the road, pretty far out away from the resource areas. If we can go to the next image, one of the other things that we agreed to do, okay, so this is a picture, but some of these trees were pruned up as part of that plan. One of the things I want to point out is if you're there, you really don't, it doesn't look like trees were removed. The area is still pretty well forested and the trees look good and healthy. So we can go on to the next one. One of the requirements was that we plant 3 saplings, so 3 red pines were planted. My understanding is that Vern ran the species by Julia before they went in and provided a location map to the file at the time. So this is one. This is number 1, and I took several pictures of these so you can see the plant, but also you can see where it is. It's down by the river. If we can go to the next one. So this has number 2. Again, you can see the water right behind it. These are in the area that's to the left of the dock, for those of you guys who remember the site. Okay, and the next one. This is number 3, which is right next to the dock. To your right is the dock that was permitted under a different permit. If we can go on to the next one, just again, this is 2 of the red pines that were planted to kind of give you an idea of where they are in relation to the river. So we've planted 3 pine that are in the same kind of general vicinity of the river as what was removed. And I think that's pretty much it. This was really a pretty straightforward one. You may remember there was like a 40-something page arborist report that we provided the commission with, and all the work was done in accordance with those recommendations.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
No.
No.
Have a motion?
Motion to issue a certificate of compliance.
Second.
Second.
Paul?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to pass that around to be signed, Julia.
Sure thing, just hold tight.
Okay, next is 563rd Street, approval of condominium documents.
Okay, I think that we'll allow Lisa, sorry, Lisa, for the delay on that. You should be able to speak.
No problem. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, on behalf of Seacoast Homes LLC. And thank you for pulling this up, Julia. The commission might recall that they issued an order of conditions relative to this project in 9/5/2019, and as part of the special conditions was that the condominium documents include the restrictions related to what can happen on the property after the project is done. And Julia has the rules and regulations up here, and so we'll go to item 14. And these are taken verbatim from the order of conditions. And I also provide the book and page number as well. Importantly, Julia, do you have the master deed up there too, or no?
Yes, I did. So I pulled up the section from the master deed as well. That was the declaration of trust, and this is the master deed,
Right.
which also references the order of conditions and the same 5 provisions and restrictions.
And importantly, the last line, which says this provision shall not be changed or amended by the trustees of the unit owners. So we have included those provisions in the condominium documents. The condominium documents aren't yet recorded, but they will be likely before the end of this month because we have our first closing shortly thereafter. And obviously we want to get these on record. These have also been, as is our practice, provided to all of the buyers as part of the purchase and sale agreement documents and the marketing documents. So everybody knows about this. This is not a surprise. So we'll be back into the commission in any event for a certificate of compliance also when all the work on the ground is done before that closing also. So we're requesting you approve the condominium documents that they reflect the required provisions in the order of conditions so that in fact we can then record them.
And they look fine to me. In case anyone hadn't reviewed or read the complete documents, I did read through each one. And Lisa had edited this a little bit to call it out more clearly that these provisions can't be changed by the trustees or the unit owners.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Can I get a motion then?
Motion to approve the condominium documents.
Second,
Paul,
yes.
David,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Jim Laverdiere, 7 Opportunity Way, a request for determination of applicability.
Okay, I've allowed Jim and also Mike DeRosa to speak if they want to start with any kind of presentation. You can go right ahead.
Thanks, Julia. This is Mike DeRosa, DeRosa Environmental. We are out in the industrial park, 7 Opportunity Way. And as with most of the buildings out in the industrial park, as we know, there's essentially a moat of ditches and drainage ditches around the buildings. And most of them have become occupied by Phragmites. What Jim would like to do is actually have the commission, and what we've asked the commission to do is issue a negative determination number 4, which would basically the work described in the request is not within an area subject to protection under the Act, including the buffer zone. Therefore, said work does not require filing of an NOI. And basically, these areas are drainage structures. They were built when the industrial park was built in order to allow the water to flow. As we know, there's not a lot of gradient out there. It's a very flat piece of land, and the water comes up and the water goes down. But what we'd like to do is actually remove the Phragmites and the roots. We would cut the standing material, compost that, and then Jim would like to excavate the roots out and maintain that. We have a native species planting list in the RDA that we would use to replace the frag, and then Jim would just maintain that. So that's what we'd like to do, and we're here to answer any questions from the commission.
In your write-up, you mentioned that you were going to plant some native plants in there.
Yes. What we want to do is occupy that space with native species and keep after the Phragmites to keep it from coming back. So actually treat it as a restoration area and as an ecological functioning wetland system, as opposed to what's there now, which is basically a drainage ditch.
So you're surrounded by Phragmites, so it's going to be a never-ending.
It is, and we told Jim it's going to be a maintenance issue, and that's in one part. That's why we want the commission to issue a -4, so that he can go in and not have to, he can maintain it and do what needs to be done without having to repeatedly come back to the commission. It's in his best interest to maintain this and keep the water flowing. So that's the intent.
Mike, in the RDA, did you propose excavation, or I thought that you were just proposing cutting and treating?
We were proposing, we weren't going to treat, we were proposing to do repeat cuttings.
Right.
And as we got into it and we started thinking about it, if the commission can find that this is not a wetland resource area, then it might be more effective to go in and actually remove these roots and then replant this with our native planting plan. And so that's how we ended up with that.
That's a big project to excavate the roots of all that. That's a huge excavation you're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's sort of a different project than what is proposed in this RDA, like managing all the soils and it's just a different proposal.
It's a different, more aggressive proposal for sure. It's more in line with what Rochester Electronics did down the street, where they cleaned out their ditch, which was also overrun by frag.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can I say a couple things?
Absolutely.
So I've owned this building from 2004. And when I bought the building, my company was called Clean Line back then. And we maintained all around the waterways. And when we bought the building, there was actually a pond there. And it was, we had ducks, we had, birds and animals. And when what's happened down in the park, as you probably already know, is that nobody's maintaining their waterways. So I sold the company in 2012, and Promark moved in and spent 5 years there, and they didn't maintain anything. And across the street, the adjacent property across the street, which there's a water pipe, there's 2 water pipes that go under the road that allow the water to come out of my property and go across the way into another, I guess it would be an easement, water easement. And nobody's done any maintenance across the street. So what's happened is the pipes underground are all plugged. All the water's backing up on my property. And if these Phragmites are not something new, these are only within the last 5 years since I have not been there. And what's happening is, if you look at my property, the water's encroached on my driveway, and you'll see patches of, I just keep on maintaining holes and patches because the Phragmite root system is built up higher than the pond was. So now when I've called in people to do a new driveway, and they can't do anything because we can't raise the grade there. So I feel like we need to, it's becoming an emergency issue because I don't know if you know this, but I took over the company back in 2018. We now employ over 40 people. We started from scratch again in 2018. The company Promark moved out of the building and laid off 65, 70 people. And when I heard that, I came back in, started up the new company and hired back the employees that were there before. So the other thing that's happened is next door to me to the left, Packaging Specialties. I didn't know this going into it, but when we allowed them to, I was fine with them expanding their building, but when they did that, we've seen more growth of wetlands coming into our property as well on that side. So we're getting encroached on both sides with Phragmites and wetlands, and nobody else is doing anything about it. But I would like to just maintain my own property, and we got to dig these swales down so that the water has somewhere to go, so I can fix my driveway. And it's a big deal. It's a large cost to get this driveway fixed, and it's probably going to be a larger cost to maintain the swales.
So just quickly, to address the cleaning out the swales, what we've allowed in other situations in the industrial park where people want to clean out these swales that are overgrown and all that, we've allowed them to go ahead and maintain them by cleaning out the swale down to the design elevation. Yep. Or native soil material, whichever kind of comes first. So if you know the design elevation from previous plans for when this drainage swale was created, that's great. If you don't, then generally people have surveyed it and used the bottom elevation of culverts that are associated with the swale to come up with that bottom elevation. And then we allow them to excavate out the accumulated material and plant material to that elevation. If they can't get, if there is no culvert invert, then they can clean it out till they see they get through the vegetation accumulation and the sediment accumulation, and they reach that native soil layer. So, I mean, that would be, I think, appropriate in this case, but I think what you're proposing is a bit more than that in terms of getting rid of all of this Phragmites. And I'm just a little bit concerned, and I want to ask Mike about, because I know that the swale itself is a stormwater management feature, but it looked as though from previous plans that you showed me that there are areas kind of around here in the sort of bow out area of Phragmites, and certainly in the back where there's a pond, that are actually wetland. And so to do the kind of excavation of this entire site that you're talking about, you would be getting into wetland or at a minimum buffer zone, would you not?
Well, I think what you initially proposed is what Jim would like to achieve, which is getting the vegetation out and the accumulated debris to the invert, the outlet invert of the culvert. I think that's more than adequate, Jim, for what you want to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the wetlands you're talking about, which was one time a pond, you're correct. There was a pond there when I bought the property. We have several, I think if you go back years in Google Earth, you'll see that there was water standing there. But I did a little research today to see how deep down the pipes go underground that connect other properties. And I would agree that, if we went to the bottom of that pipe and kept the culvert open all the way through, which is now not flowing any water. I have to say though, even if I do all this, it doesn't mean the water goes away. The water just stays in that pipe, and it doesn't. The neighbor across the street, there's I think a 50-foot easement. Is that correct, Mike? We saw across the
40 or 50-foot drainage easement, for the ditch.
Street that is completely filled up, and also the pipe is clogged. So really the water, it looks like it was designed that it came off my building into the swale, down and through the pipe, and then around the back of this other building, but nothing can ever go through. So what are we supposed to do? We're just gonna live with the I mean, I'm amazed at what's happened in the last 6-7 years. I mean, we didn't even have Phragmites in there when I bought the property. This is all, also, the guy to the company to the right of us, they encroached their driveway closer to our swale. That wasn't there originally when I bought the property. So everybody keeps on encroaching on each side of me, and I haven't, and I'm getting the blunt of it, and my entire driveway is lifting up now. So we've got to do something. It's becoming an emergency.
So in looking at this picture that we're looking at, the water flows to the bottom of the picture?
Yes, from the top to the bottom, correct.
And the pipe that goes under the street, is that a city pipe?
It's what would you call that, Mike? Like a culvert pipe?
It's a culvert. I'm not sure if, the city must have control of the industrial park, I would imagine. Does the city plow this for you, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the culvert pipe, I can tell you what it is, Mike. It's because I looked at it today and I took a picture of it. It's completely full. It's about 24 inches round, and there's 2 of them that go under the road, and both of them clogged with trees. And
trees?
Well, yeah, there's actually
Roots.
a tree root in one of them, but not just there's not large trees. That's a good picture.
There it is, right there. Yeah.
That shows where the pond used to be.
Here's the culvert. Here's under the
Yeah,
road.
right there. Yeah.
It keeps on going down this way.
Yep.
But you're saying that it's getting clogged up on the other side of the road in here?
Yeah.
Yes,
there's
yeah.
There's never been any maintenance from 2004 that I've owned the building. I've never seen one bit of maintenance done on the other side. So it's completely clogged. And it's actually ruining his property because his the cat nine tails and phragmites are approaching the front of his building because it has nowhere to go. So it keeps on migrating one direction. And
Yeah, the drainage in this park is a chronic problem, as you know.
the problem I have is you see where that drawing, you see where the pond is. See how narrow my driveway is? I have 10-wheel, I have large trucks going in and out of there all day long. And it's already narrow, but what's happening now is phragmites are lifted beyond the top of the driveway. So now all that root system just keeps on getting higher and higher. And in the winter, it's even worse because when we plow, then the water has nowhere to drain. So it ends up filling, my whole parking lot ends up being a swimming pool there. So
Jim, was this area shown as wet, sort of, I guess this was a pond. Was this a pond when you
yes, when
moved in? That was a pond. Was it but it was not a stormwater detention pond or a drainage basin. It was just a natural pond similar to the one back here.
Yeah, it was like the one in the back, and it was,
But I think, Jim, it was designed as a detention basin, right?
I mean, I don't know. Actually, that I can't, but
yeah.
it could have been.
We would need to know that in order to let you go in there and do some sort of excavation. I think that's because, like I was saying before, that's a much different project than what you proposed. So if this is a wetland area, that would require a notice of intent.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that under this RDA, what you did propose, which is the cutting, sort of the cutting and regular cutting way of managing the phragmites and letting the other species kind of get moved back in there if possible. That's an okay way to do it at this point. And then this swale can certainly be cleaned out the way the commission has allowed other swales to be cleaned out in the industrial park, like I described before.
Well, that sounds reasonable, Jim.
Yeah, it does. The one thing
The whole thing could not be dug out.
No, it would just be the swale, the channel.
The red line.
Yeah, the red line, exactly.
Right.
We would cut the rest, Jim, and just have the contractor clean out to the invert elevation just in that single, linear thing.
Sure.
Have you ever approached the city about cleaning out those two culverts?
Yeah, I've had, I think Julie has talked to my attorney, Mark Fry, a couple times. I haven't personally had time to get involved in it, but it's getting to the point now where we just got to stay on it because we have to. I don't want to go through another winter of what we've seen the last couple of winters.
Right.
I would suggest, and I think you may have already been in touch with John Eric White, the city engineer, about this. At least your attorney has, and he's in charge of our stormwater division at Department of Public Works. So he's the right person to work with on trying to figure out a solution, better solution for the area.
I just want to mention one thing. If you go to the first building to your left when you come down Opportunity Way is owned by Rochester Electronics. And if you look in their front lawn, they have a small little pond there. And that is exactly the way, if you're ever wondering what my pond looked like when I bought it, that's what it looked like. It was a mowed pond, it just only about a foot or two of water in it. And it was very clean. And this all, just kept on getting out of hand. And I don't know when the phragmites started taking over, but.
Well, I think it might be a worthwhile project then, if you think that would benefit your site, to return that back to a pond or a basin, that you could take a look at that as a separate project and propose a notice of intent if that was indeed a drainage basin or whatever it was in the past to clean that out again.
Okay. Sounds reasonable. So you're going to allow us to do the swales, clean out the swales? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, go ahead, Julia. Yep.
Just wanted, this is the commission's decision here, so.
Great. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have one. Earlier in his presentation, he was saying he was hoping for a -4 determination, saying that this property would no longer be considered a resource area. Since we're breaking this up into two, are we going to just forget that -4 part?
I mean, I think it's definitely clear that it's part of the original drainage design, even the basin portion.
Mhm.
So it's our opinion that it's part of the drainage design, and it's not intended to, function as a wetland resource area under the act or the ordinance.
I would say, though, that in this case, there's also buffer zone involved. And so that is considered a resource area under the Newburyport Wetlands Protection Ordinance. So I don't really feel comfortable with that -4
Yeah.
being checked off in this case. I think it's fine to go ahead as a -2 or 3 and get the work done that you need done. But
That's fine. I mean, we're fine with that, Julia. That's, the main thing is we're able to manage this area. And then when the time comes, Jim, we'll talk about doing a notice of intent, and maybe that covers the driveway work as well as the basin work, all in one project. Julia, does that sound?
yeah, I would propose that all as one project if that's
Right.
something you want to look into. But I just make sure that you have the evidence to show, to prove that these other areas are in fact part of an original drainage design and not natural wetlands.
One thing you have to keep in mind, Julia, when you look at this little drawing that he has up with the red line and the blue pond, they were all connected as one. It's not really the way it looks. The
Right.
and the pond were all connected at one time.
Yeah.
So what is the green line? Is that another swale?
It's another swale that went in front of the packaging specialty in the front.
But you're not connected to it.
Well, what we found interesting recently when we were looking at that is that packaging specialty there was a pipe going under their driveway connecting into Rochester Electronics further down, but that's been blocked off. So I'm getting actually backup water. If you look down where the red meets the green, where the arrow comes down to the left side of my building, you see all that, the Phragmites are starting to take over in that area. Well, that's all new. That wasn't like that when I bought the property. So, like I said, things are happening on both sides of my building.
Yeah.
And we gotta,
There's no culvert under your driveway that connects to that green line.
no culvert. Oh. No, I think it was meant to, everything coming off of 7 Opportunity Way was supposed to exit to the right or exit to the left. And right now it's just exiting.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, can you just summarize the work? Is this going to be hand work or?
Yeah, so what we will do is go in and cut the standing Phragmites by hand. And then probably, Jim, you found a contractor that would come in and do the work on the swale portion.
Yep. Yeah, there's a gentleman out of Ipswich that does this, and he said he's done other ones in the park. And I don't have his contact.
And that's done with a piece of equipment? Is that?
Yeah, probably a backhoe or mini excavator.
Yeah.
So I think Julia started to say this earlier. That's a fairly big piece of land that you're working on, but it sounds like it's now narrowed down to just a narrow strip, not disturbance of the entire space.
Exactly. Yeah, it would just be that strip of where the ditch is. So, and we can provide oversight. We can do probably a post-construction letter back to Julia just to, make sure it was done right.
Yeah. What also about like maybe submitting I'm curious as to know when you're in there digging all that out, it's gonna have to be stockpiled or put into trucks. Like, what is because this wasn't part of this original RDA proposal. So what would the process be for getting those soils and plant materials out of there? That's a lot of, you're gonna have to dig pretty deep to get those roots.
Right.
And maybe as you answer that, in the schedule too, like, is this a 1 week project or a 2-month project?
Shouldn't be more than a week. We get in and we would do the cutting, and that would go off to a composting operation in Rowley. And then the excavator or the contractor would come in with his machinery and just do the trench piece to the invert of the existing culvert.
Okay. So the commission
good
could,
idea.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that much material, I would think. But he would have to lay it out on the lawn in front, let it dewater, then come back, put it in a truck and take it away.
It'd probably be a good idea to have a pre-construction meeting with Julia at any case to
Sure.
make sure the contractor understands all this and to discuss it out in the field.
Sure.
yeah, thanks, David. And I think that's a good idea. And also, Mike, if you could provide just an additional sketch that shows the location for the stockpile and dewatering of that material,
I can
and
do
some
that, yeah.
detail on erosion controls in that, during that phase of the project. I think that's going to be important before we move forward.
Sure.
One last question on this is more maybe my education. When you take the roots of Phragmites and you compost them, is that the end of their existence, or do they go on to grow somewhere else after
No,
that?
we compost them at an operation that takes it up to 140 degrees, so they're actually destroyed. And we will harvest them before they go to seed.
Thank you.
So Julia, do you want to get the information you have asked for before we approve this, or do you want to make it a condition that they can't start until, assuming we approve it?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to see that shown on the plan, I think, before
Okay,
approved, just to make sure that it's right and that everyone's comfortable with where that is.
Yeah,
And
and
how
I think
that's
especially since this has changed, the plan has changed so much just tonight.
Yeah.
As far as the scope goes, it probably would be better to get all that info.
okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, so if you could write that up, Mike, that would be great, and including, because otherwise I have to put it in all sorts of special conditions. I have to put all this information that we've just discussed about excavating the trench only, or excavating the swale only, and et cetera, and stockpile the soils and do water. If you could just write up those details and submit that, then we can just close this out at the next meeting.
That's fine. When is the next meeting?
21st.
Perfect. And when would you want the additional information to you?
We asked for that to be a week ahead of the meeting, so that'd be next Tuesday if you can get it to us.
Yep. We'll make sure that happens. Yep.
So what do we do about the property across the street so we don't keep on having this problem? Well, I mean, we're all sitting here as adults here, so let's.
Yeah, it's,
I mean,
I guess it's
gotta
sort of up to you. I mean, we can try and help with getting the city to clean up the culvert,
Right.
Yeah.
but as far as across the street, I don't know that we have any, other than you talking to them and trying to convince them.
Aren't there, yeah, but when there's easements, there's drainage easements going right through the property, what does that mean? Does that mean the easements are allowed, other owners are allowed to go onto his property and clean out his easement?
I think you're gonna have to talk with other folks in the city about that, like the Department of Public Services, in terms of those drainage easements, which they would be responsible for. If there are any written documents about how those are to be maintained and who's to do what legally or not legally, then I think that they're the right people to discuss that with.
I think we already have, Julia, and I think we already come to the conclusion that we, as the owner of the buildings, have responsibility for our own property. You've
Yeah.
said, my attorney and your attorneys and your engineers have said that. So
Yeah.
what are we supposed to do? I keep on getting a runaround that I can't do anything. I mean, I'm gonna.
I mean, I don't know how you, I don't know how you force them to do that. Like I said, I think in one of my emails to your attorney, if there was an order of conditions issued to your neighbor that had conditions in it, however long ago it may have been issued, that required them to maintain those swales, then the Conservation Commission now would be able to address that. Or if there was an operation and maintenance plan that was approved as part of an order of conditions issued to them, and in that operations and maintenance plan, it specified how they were to maintain these things. And again, that would be something that we could address with your neighbor. But absent those things, I mean, I don't know when their property was permitted. I don't know what was involved in that, in their application or in their permit. So there wouldn't be much that we could force them to do on their own property. It's just the way property rights, I guess, go.
So, but the city is responsible for the culvert pipes under the ground. Is that what you're saying?
Again, that's
think
not
they
our
are, but-
area of jurisdiction, so you'd have to talk with DPS.
We'll talk to DPS. Who was the person there, Julia, that you mentioned earlier?
John Eric White is the city engineer.
Okay.
All right.
And he's very helpful. I'm sure if he has plans or thoughts about it, he will share them with you and be as helpful as he can.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Well,
very much.
Do we need to vote to continue this? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Motion to continue till July 21st.
Second.
Okay. Paul,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a good night.
Jim.
Thanks, Julia.
Thanks.
Okay, next, can I get a motion to open the public hearings?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Paul,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, first up is Christopher Horn, Seacoast Homes LLC, 192 Northern Boulevard.
We've requested a continuance on that.
Okay,
To what date?
The next meeting.
Motion to continue to July 21st.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
And Tom, you'll get this to us by next Tuesday?
Yep. That's the plan.
All right, Paul,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
and I vote yes. To all of those attendees who are hoping to comment tonight, it'll be continued and we will talk about it in 2 weeks. Sorry if you wasted your time. Okay, next. Tom and Chris Malagny, 3 Louise Street,
Yep, Melorani.
Melorani. Okay,
All right, so this is Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting, here on behalf of Tom and Chris Melorani. With me tonight is Tom Melorani, I believe is on. I'm not sure if Chris is on too. Lisa Mead, who handled the zoning application, and Eileen Graff, who did the design. So this is a single family rebuild. The site is a sort of heavily impacted site in a fairly densely developed portion of the island on the western side of the basin. If we can zoom in on the photograph that's right there on the cover. Yeah, so you can see the site has, driveway, couple sheds. There's actually remnants of an old foundation that are right in the area where lot number is on the plan. There was a swimming pool in the back left-hand side or upper right in this orientation. And there was a trampoline in the back right when Tom picked up the property. Tom actually lives on Louise Street, abuts his own project here. And just, I think welcomed the opportunity to clean up a property that had become dilapidated in the neighborhood. He's since removed things like the pool liner that was on the ground and the trampoline and all that, but there's still quite a bit to be done to clean up the site. So if we can move on, I think we don't need to look at the USGS unless anybody's wondering where it is. Okay, so this is the 2019 image. So again, you can kind of see how busy. Tom picked up the property before this image was taken. You can tell because the pool liner is gone, which would have been in the upper left. But you can see how busy the site is with the two sheds, the driveway, the house, etc. If we go down to the flood map. So the property, oh, that's all right. You can see the pin there. The property is partially X zone and partially AE9. The elevations on the lot range from about 7 to 10. Okay, if we can go to the photos.
Oops, sorry, hold on.
That's all right. I forgot I had put that aerial in there too. So, so much for zooming in on the cover. We could have done it there. So you can see photographs from the driveway, photographs from the back. You'll notice there's a bulkhead door into the, calling it a foundation is a little bit of a polite term. But if you look at the picture of the structure, it is certainly dug down. And there are these sort of concrete posts here and there. There are some cinder block walls within that, holding up, but it's kind of a hodgepodge foundation. You can see the photo from the pool liner that Tom since removed, and the trampoline, which was since removed in the lower right. Okay, if we can go on, I think we can, this is just a quick floor plan of what's proposed. Maybe we can skip past these to the elevation views. So this is what's proposed, and these are what was just updated. The only difference is we changed the skirting elevation and we added the floodplain elevation to the elevation views. No other changes were made. And if you can see what we're proposing on the left-hand side of the house up top is an elevated garage with a ramp going up to it. The ramp would be made of steel bridge decking, and I've got some photos of that a little bit further on. But and then on the right, there's also another under building parking bay. And then you can see that there's a deck used to access up to the second floor. So most of the living space in this new structure is actually second floor. And just where you see the doorway and up to the right, there's a little bit of living space there. Everything you see to the left is actually garage space. And it's elevated, significantly above the flood elevation.
Tom, where is the other parking that you?
Well, I can't control the cursor, but if you look at the top image and go to the bottom right of the structure, right there.
Right here?
So that's
Yeah.
a garage door?
That's it. Well, there's no door. It's just an opening, and then there's an 8-foot drive to access that, which you'll see on the site plan in a minute.
So that's at ground level?
That's at ground level.
Okay.
Right, and Eileen is on the thing too. So in a few minutes, we can have her give you a quick rundown of the. So we can go to the next one, just gives you different elevation views. So this is from the, not from the Louise Street side, from the other side, the northern side. And again, you can kind of see the garages to the right and the decks to get up above. And what we clarified, if you can see the labeling in the left-hand side, when Julia looked at that, and it does look like it pinches close to the ground, it wasn't really clear that we had the 2.5 feet clear. And the other thing was making sure that we didn't have siding going below 2 feet above flood. So we've done that and added those labels into the profile.
So on the main part of the building,
Yep.
where the deck ends, is that 2 feet above there? I know
If you can zoom in on the bottom left, so we can see that text. See the 2.5 foot minimum right there? Is that where you're talking about?
No, to the right.
Okay.
To the right? Yeah, it just gets more as you go to the right.
Oops.
It just increases. So the elevation of the lot is somewhere around 10 of that back corner of the deck is. And on the right-hand side, it gets down into the 7s. So,
Right.
you know, we've
Right
got
there at that
significant-
first post. I know you're sloping down, but that looks like the lowest.
Oh, I see where yeah. So, Eileen,
Right there, just.
Right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Eileen, can we unmute Eileen just so we can have her answer that? But I know she
Yes.
looked,
Correct. So that should be 2'6" there as well. That, while I may not have the exact grade correctly, because it does slope pretty significantly there, it is, you know, as our note says, all skirting won't be any, it will always be 2'6" above grade. Excuse me.
right? You can see the note that's right below that.
Mhm.
So we do note that everywhere it's 2.5 feet
Okay.
and a minimum of 11 feet, which is 2 feet above flood. Okay, so so now the next one is the site plan.
Just before you do that, Tom,
Yeah, sure.
no grading, that dark line that's the I assume it's the existing grade. That is only existing grade, or is there grading?
Yeah, no, that's only existing grade. I don't want to say no grading, and I'll show you why on the site plan. And that's because the foundation currently creates a hole. So if we go to the site plan, you'll see that what we are trying to do, if we look at that back portion where the existing building is, and you can see the 10 contour where Tim,
Yes.
you can see where we've joined contours on either side of the existing house. So we're not grading, but we're putting clean sand back in where the building comes out of, because there's going to be a big pit there. So grading, we are adding sand, we're nourishing the dune. So, you know, technically that's grading, but we're not changing any existing dune grades. We're just bringing the
No
elevation up to
excavation,
match.
it's just fill.
Yeah, yeah. So you can see how busy the site is. It was painful to get this all surveyed and get it all done. We originally had the first concept, we had the type that we did for Russo off of, can't remember the street, but off of Northern Boulevard, where we had sort of that sand, earth, and berm that went up to a protruding platform off the garage. And when Tom went in and met with Julia and Jennifer, they suggested going with a ramp. So what we did is we went with the bridge gratings, which will allow floodwaters to go through, and it also allows sunlight through, so we can actually underneath it. So if we can go to the next slide, what I did, just to try to make it really clear, because it's such a busy plan, what you see shaded in green will be vegetated when we're done. What you see in that lime green will be vegetated, but we're claiming we only need 35% to get a balance underneath that bridge grading, but we're claiming 50% in our calculations that we provided with you. And if we can go to the next slide, this is a photograph of an identical one in that was done in Salisbury. They've yet to plant under it. They were going to be planting this spring, and because of COVID, they were unable to get the plants. So, so they're going to be doing it in the fall. But this this one was approved, and they received 50% credit for survival under. And if you go to the next picture, there's actually a downward look through the grading, and I think it's helpful if you even zoom in a little bit. You can kind of see how open this is. You know, this is more open than the through flow decking that used in the past to have survival under. So it's a great material, and not only does it let light and water go through, but it also would let floodwaters go through in the event that there was a flood. And then I think, trying to think after this stuff, there may not be anything too important. If we can just scroll so I can see those images on the left. If you can just scroll down a little bit. So that's these are the original submitted, where we didn't have the those elevation notes. So just so the commission is aware of the differences in what we provided you, we actually added those elevations. So what I showed you profiles earlier are identical to these, only now we clarify the 2.5 feet and we change the skirting to 11. And then this is the updated narrative. I basically changed the number 9 to the number 11, and then I fixed a couple typos. I did it red line strikeout, so you can see the changes. Basically that first, yeah, so right there I changed 11 to 9, and then I had like, it's the elevation on site range from 7 to 10, 8 feet. So I got rid of the 8. So I mean, it's just, so that is basically what was changed in the narrative. There's very minimal what was submitted today in terms of, you know, of any detail. It didn't change the site plan. So overall, we get rid of, you know, a lot of the vegetation on this site is overgrown landscape stuff, remnant lawn. There is very nice dune grass behind the structure in some places. There is some decent dune grass on site, but there's some invasives. There's bittersweet and a few other things out there, and then there's a bunch of you know, arborvitaes and stuff like that that will all be replaced. We currently are showing it as American beach grass, 1 foot on center in these areas. In the event we decide to add some type of woody vegetation in there, we would come back to you with a minor revision with a landscape plan for review and approval. So you can.
Is there a
Yeah.
key? Is there a key on this plan with the shaded green that shows that this will all be vegetated? I've just seen it sort of an overall shading.
Yeah. So I just shaded this because the plan was so busy, it was difficult to see. I can provide this to the commission with a key if you would like. It was so busy, it was hard to graphically explain to you guys tonight. So
I think all you need is like a key somewhere that shows like the color green, and then that says like American beach grass, etc., or whatever the plan.
Right. No, I can do it in 2 minutes. The only other thing I need to do is, since this is a stamp plan, I did get Tim Meehan's permission to mark it up this way, is that I would need to do that and make a clear note that the markup was added by me and not by the individual who stamped the plan. But yes, we can do that, absolutely. There is within the summary table, there is a note about the 50% credit on under the ramp. In the vegetation calculations. It makes a clear note. I mean, I'm confident that we're going to have more than 50%. I don't know that it's going to be as dense as if you didn't have a ramp above it, but I'm confident we're going to have vegetation, you know, fairly uniformly underneath that ramp structure.
How thick is the ramp?
I'm going to say, I mean, you can kind of see here, it might be better to be looking at the next image. I'm going to say it's like 1.5 to 2 inches.
Well,
and
that side one looked a little, I mean, there's no scale or anything, but the side one looked like it was thicker than that. I'm just wondering what percentage of this is like, you know, 1/2 inch or so clear. In determining this is 50%, I'm having some trouble thinking about some of this that's basically, all ramp.
Yeah, so the thickness of that, I mean, I think it's like 1.5 to 2 inch, the webbing part, and then underneath are those rails that provide some additional structural support. And then you have the frame on the outside. I think what you're looking at is a frame that,
Yeah, I see that part of it, but even at that,
yeah,
I'm just, I mean, 3 inches of clear to grow something. I'm just having a little trouble envisioning some of this. And where did the 50% come from? Was that just what they used in Salisbury, or is this something that?
that was something that we discussed with Salisbury, and actually at the time, I think we had some discussions a little bit with DCR, because this house in Salisbury is actually right up on the dune. And we agreed it was reasonable to, rather than trying to take 100% credit, that 50%, because you're not going to get quite as much light in the areas where the ramp is closer to the ground. It's going to be somewhat thinner, but it also is going to grow up through the decking. I mean, typically in situations where I've seen through flow and other applications that vegetation can grow through, it actually does grow through, and people have to go with their weed whacker sometimes and whack it down to the grading level. But I've looked under there during sun and during cloudy conditions over there in Salisbury, and there's plenty of ambient light getting in there.
Yeah, I don't have a good feel for that. I don't know if anyone else does. I just wanted to point that out.
Tom, do you need that 50% credit in order to achieve the appropriate?
Yeah, that was the one drawback to going away from the earth and berm, because on the earth and berm we could do a different geometry to get up to the garage, but when you're doing a ramp like this, we kind of have to be rectangular because of all the structure involved. And so we do on the earthen one, that original earthen one, we wouldn't have needed that. We would have planted the side slopes down. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we do need it. We would end up about 300 square feet ish short. And
has anybody done, is there any data on how likely the vegetation is to survive under these ramps, or are we just using the 50% as just kind of a sense of things kind of thing?
We're using the 50% because we've got some experience with other materials that actually, I don't think, let quite as much light through the through flow decking, where we've had 100% growth underneath. Through flow is just not a rugged enough material to use for a driveway ramp.
But nobody's actually done any analysis, or there's no.
There is probably some work out there from its application in bridges. This is actually used many times to cross wetlands with bridges. It's the open grading, very similar to what you actually have on the bridge over the Merrimack on the drawbridge.
Well, if there is anything out there, I think it would be helpful, in order to make a decision that the 50% is the right number.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly look for some supporting data on that.
Great, thanks.
So, am I on, Julia?
Yes, you are. Yep.
Thank you. I didn't know if I was talking to myself or not. Lisa Mead, we can get you the details on the grate. The client just sent me the cut sheet on it, but it's actually got a couple of different sizes, so I'm not sure which size, but let me tell you that the bearing bar thickness ranges from 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. And the height of each bar range from 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches. So it's the center section of it, to David's question, That's the thickness of those, the bars and the grating, David. And so I don't know what the
Yeah.
frame sizes are, but we can get you a cut sheet on it. Excuse me, a cut sheet on it.
Yeah, it'd probably be helpful to see a profile, like say through the middle or something that would give us a better indication of how much space there is. Like, you know, I just to make it clear.
Yeah. Yeah, and I may be able to even, I don't know if you guys, this is the difficulty not having a hearing in person. I could probably get a sample of the material. There's probably some scrap left from the Salisbury job where I might be able to get a piece that I could drop off so you could actually look at it in person. Are you guys actually going into City Hall at all?
No.
Okay. Well, then I'll try to get some better photos as well. We'll get you the cut sheet and I'll try to get some better photos, and maybe I can get one with the sun shining down, kind of showing you the light underneath too.
It indicates on the on this cut sheet, and again, it depends on which one you have, that there is a 4-inch crossbar spacing, so that there's 4 inches in between the space. I can't tell which one it is on this comparison, but we can definitely get that for you because we do have that for sure.
And the width of this whole structure, is that line up with the garage, or is it larger? I mean, is this something, the width of this thing, I'm just questioning whether it has to be as wide as it's shown.
Yeah,
So Julia, if you go to the elevations, I think, Tom, if you go to the elevations, it shows.
Right. Yeah, the other one I think has a dead end to the
Right, A03.
Yeah. So if you go down, I think we pinched it as tight as we could to the garage doors.
Yeah,
The ramp is 24 wide and the building's 28.
Okay.
So it steps in from the building width.
Okay.
So Tom, do you think you'd be able to get some pictures maybe from the manufacturer or something?
Well, I mean,
something growing underneath. I think that's,
yeah, I mean, so I can, unfortunately, if we had that one planted over in Salisbury, I could have actually given you pictures of it. But I can look, because this has been used. I know this is something the Army Corps has required in some small bridges, you know, crossing over sensitive wetlands, especially salt marsh.
Tom, did you all use this at the Newburyport Yacht Club with that bridge?
No. So that was through flow decking, and the through flow decking, we have, you know, not only have we gotten rid of the Phragmites, you know, by carefully timing when it gets cut so that we're not actually making it stronger. But we also, so the salt marsh is restoring underneath it, but we have about 100% cover under the whole thing. And we've done it on both docks there, and it's really been tremendous in terms of.
Well, so I guess my question is with the through flow decking, because what we're talking about right here now is not necessarily the difference in between steel or whatever it is that's being used. It's the openness that's allowing the light and the water through.
Right.
So if you're getting all of that growth through the through flow decking used over at the Newburyport Yacht Club, would that not be similar to the amount of light and water getting through this?
Right. So, yeah, so this is.
yeah, but this is 24 feet wide. I don't think that boardwalk there is 24. So there, you're getting light from the side.
Well,
also.
one of them is,
Right.
Yeah, one of them's 8 feet wide. One of them's pretty wide, the main dock. But yeah, I mean, some of that over at the Newburyport Yacht Club, you know, we have elevation, so you get light coming in from the sides too. But those through flow decking in an ideal orientation lets 60% light through, and in a non-ideal orientation about 40% light through. This just eyeballing it when you look at that grate, because the steel is so much stronger, you've got bigger gaps, you've got bigger openings, and I think that you're getting more than that 60% light, but I'll see what I can find for data
Right, and you're facing west-ish.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, you're gonna have the, you don't have anything blocking it from the south, sort of the south to north is clear. The home is gonna block the early morning sun, but it does anyway if that was vegetated. But in the afternoon and sun going down, it's gonna get plenty of sun.
And you're proposing beach grass under it?
Yeah, the current proposal is beach grass. I actually thought about and we'll take another look at maybe adding a little bit of seed mix for a Pennsylvania sedge, which is a native grass-like vegetation that occurs on Plum Island, because that is a little bit more shade tolerant. So we could maybe mix that up a little bit with some things that might thrive a little bit better if we don't get as much light, and give some more diversity under there. So I can look at that as well. But the current proposal was just plant dune grass underneath.
So if we come back with you, we will provide to you, if we can find some examples where there's growth under them, we'll provide that. And we will provide a closer view with the measurements, David, relative to the openings and the size of those, the size of the webbing. I think it's about exactly what I said, given the text that I receive and the shot of the cut sheet. So we'll provide that information to you as well, so that you have it.
And Tom, maybe if you had a picture of what's going on at the American Yacht Club, so we have something to compare to.
Yeah, and it's Newburyport Yacht Club, and I have that. I mean, so the same through flow decking. I have a dock in Gloucester that goes through 140 feet of salt marsh, and I have 100% salt marsh growth underneath it for through flow. So I've got there's plenty of data and plenty of everything on through flow. Bridge grading is something people don't use as much, just because it's a far more expensive product.
Tom, one more thing. On this plan, there's a note over towards sort of like this right side of the green area. It says restoration planting hatched areas, and it has these two arrows. I'm not necessarily seeing a hatched anything, and what does that mean?
So I guess if you go back to the one that isn't marked up in green, that's why I found the plan maybe not. If you look at these, there is hatching you can kind of see, but ultimately.
Here and here?
Yeah, and so what we're going to be doing is we're just, what's going to happen when the demo happens, we bring in sand, there's going to be more areas that become devegetated as part of that. So we're just showing you that when we're done, rather than focusing on little areas here and there, just the whole thing will be vegetated either with what's there right now or with American beach grass.
So that's just another reason why it's important to sort of update this plan with notes. With more notes.
Which I'll do. It'll either be, I could probably do it in 5 minutes, but what I need to make sure is I have to be sensitive. I'm not sure, David, you understand this. I've got somebody's stamp on this, so I've got to make sure I either have their permission or I have them actually do it in a CAD version of it and put a key. But we can.
Yeah, get rid of this note and just add a different note. I mean, whether they can do it or you can do it, we just need something to make as the final plan that shows what we're really is.
Yeah, I think if I'm doing it, what I'll do is I'll put a key and then I'll put a separate note that says, in addition to the noted restoration planting areas, all areas on site shown in green will be vegetated upon completion, and just because I can't start editing his stuff.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll make a clear note as long as he lets me do it, and it'll probably be the view that you see right here rather than me having, so that I'm not misrepresenting it. Something is stamped. But again, I'll work that out with Tim. He should be fine with it, I would think.
Okay, no outbuildings, nothing of that sort here.
Yeah, the sheds are going away.
But I mean, coming back, there's nothing else.
No. I mean, so, the nice thing with this proposal is unlike a lot of places, he'll actually have a garage. So there's that benefit. It's a nicely, it's kind of a really nice design, and it kind of gives you sort of everything you need. So there shouldn't be any need for outbuildings, et cetera. And
as far as the planting plan, explain again. I mean, there's no shrubs or anything else here that you're.
You can see some of these. We're not proposing any shrubs right now, and this is the typical thing, is that folks are always so focused on, and rightfully so, on building design and getting a plan that works for the building, that it's hard to think about the landscape aspect till you're further along. But so currently we're just showing American beach grass. There are overgrown arborvitaes that are on the site. There is a tree that I think is, the trunk may be off site, but it's in the back right yard. You can actually see a tree there on the plan. There's another tree that is right above the word Louise in Louise Street.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some trees and shrubs, and there's also some invasives up along the fence that is along the I guess it would be the northern property line there. So there's a fence up there, and then there's invasives kind of growing all over it. Yeah. The fence is off property, but some of the invasives are on property. So we would deal with that. But then there's also in that back, upper right corner, there's some beautiful dune grass in there too. So, that's about the only area on site that is really sort of very nicely vegetated with native.
We have any more questions from anybody? Okay, do we have anybody from the public who would like to comment? See nobody. I see Seamus McCormick is online. Did you want to comment? Okay, he's got his hand raised.
Okay, you can speak if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. No, I don't have any comments. So the plan looks to be much nicer than what's today.
I can barely understand you.
It's very hard to hear you, Seamus.
Apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So no, I really appreciate the time and effort that Tom's put into this plan, and it looks like, based on what the plan is and what's there today, this actually has more open space and habitat, if you will, than what's there today. So thank you for that, Tom.
Okay, anything else from anybody? Tom, you'd like to continue?
Yeah, we'd like to continue, and I just want to make sure, so what we are looking to get you is a more formal version of this presentation plan that has a key and clarifies the intent to have everything outside the footprint of the house and all that stuff planted, and some more detail on the decking grate, and if we can find some data on growth underneath, we will provide that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion?
Motion to continue.
Second.
Paul?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
And would that be to your next meeting on July 21st?
If that's what you want.
Thank you.
Right. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Next is Robert Condon, 1176th Street.
Okay, this one, he submitted a notice of intent to both us and DEP. DEP, I responded to him that several items were missing from the notice of intent and that he needed to get them to us in order to be on this meeting's agenda. At the same time, DEP was not satisfied with what he submitted and has not issued a file number yet and needs more information as well. So that's why it was on the agenda, because it was submitted, he paid the fee, etc. But there were enough things missing that it just wasn't appropriate to open the hearing tonight. So he's working on those, and we will just postpone this one.
Okay, so
Do we need to continue it to another date, or?
I think we can just, that's a good question, Paul.
You might have to re-advertise otherwise.
Yeah, so why don't you all continue it? That's the best way to do it.
Okay,
We continue the hearing until our next meeting.
Second,
Paul,
Yeah,
David,
yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, can I get a motion to close the public hearings?
so moved.
Second.
Paul,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, anything else to talk about?
Actually, there is one thing that we can call it being under continuation of old and new business. If you remember the owners of 9 Doe Run Drive, where there was the pool in the backyard, and we issued the enforcement order, and we went through like a year or more of working on that with them. We got them to remove the pool. They've now replanted it. He sent me photos of the ground where the pool had been and now has been replanted, and everything is growing in, and they removed the gravel, etc. He now has asked if it's possible to put the pool back in their backyard, but not in the wetland and outside of the 25-foot no disturb zone as a temporary pool. That they would then put back, pick up and drain and whatever they do in the fall. I said, and is there a need for any filing associated with that, given that it's temporary and is no longer going to be in the wetland? I said I would ask you all what type of approval you think is appropriate.
Well, regardless of where he puts it, it's going to be in the buffer zone, right?
It's definitely going to be in the buffer zone. He said he can move it. I asked if he could move it further than 50 feet. If he could have gotten it further than 50 feet away, essentially be exempt and no need for any filing. But he can't get it 50 feet away, but he can get it 25 feet away. So it still would be in the buffer zone, but it would be in an area that's currently lawn and, part of his developed backyard. And it is a temporary structure associated with a single family home. So I wasn't really sure because we haven't had something like this before. I think most people would just put the temporary pool in their backyard and not even say anything about it. They had gone and put it in the actual wetland, which is why we ended up in the situation we ended up in. But now he wants to put it in the backyard. So, I almost felt like an RDA was more than, maybe even more than we needed. Certainly it doesn't need a notice of intent. But I was wondering if you all felt like, because it's outside of any resource areas and it's temporary and it's already in a developed part of his backyard, if a letter permit would be appropriate or an RDA.
I think either one would work for me.
Do we know exactly where the wetland line is?
Yes, we do, because he created the wetland. So we know exactly where the wetland line is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we know exactly where the 25-foot line is also.
Yes.
He would have to be How far from that can he get, or would it be right on it?
Well, we haven't gotten that information, because he was just asking me what I wanted him to do. So how about if we, under the letter permit guidelines and letter permit application, actually requires quite a bit of information. It requires a plan that shows the adjacent wetland area and the buffer zone and what they're going to be doing and all the detail on how it's done, etc. So if he could supply all of that to us, maybe if he fills out the letter permit and it looks okay in terms of it being definitely outside of that 25-foot zone, then we could go ahead and letter permit. If he can't keep it out of 25 feet, then he has to do an RDA. What do you think?
Well, if he can't keep it outside the 25 foot, I think we would require an NOI and a request for a variance.
Okay.
I would not be inclined to do
Even
that.
given that it's a temporary.
Well,
just bear in mind, even a temporary pool, he's probably going to put down a sand base for this thing. I mean, you don't just construct it on grass.
Well, so that's the kind of information that would be required, no matter whether it's an RDA or this letter permit. He'd have to supply all of that. So
I mean,
maybe, I don't
Not
know.
to say he couldn't restore it, if the pool was gone or something of that sort. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal. But,
well, it sounds like this
Bear in
might be
mind.
something he wants to do every year.
well, I doubt I think he just established that that's where he's putting the sand, and that the rest of the year it would just be sitting dormant, I assume.
Yeah.
But it would be good to know how much sand was being put down and how much, the grade.
Well, and if he's putting sand down, that's permanent.
Right.
That's not temporary.
I don't know. I think I know too much about this because I used to install above ground pools. So,
Oh. So what do you think, David?
well, I mean, some of them have a dugout center. I mean, there's all kinds of things that people do with these. And then there's kid pools that, I mean, we have a 2-foot pool that we put all over the place. I don't know exactly what he's
So
doing.
maybe we need to understand what he means exactly by a temporary pool.
Yeah, because I think he just means it's going to be up only, part of the year. He'll take it up and put it back every year. I don't think he means he's necessarily going to just do it on grass.
So we don't know for sure.
No.
But if it's not outside the 25-foot no disturb zone, given the history with this, I would not be inclined to approve it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but other than that, I think the letter permit might be fine if we can satisfy all the things it needs.
If we can ensure that it's being, well, I don't know now that if I would say if he's going to be putting down a sand base and all that kind of thing, that maybe it should be an RDA.
Yeah, I don't know. I did them 45 years ago, so I don't know for sure. Maybe they put them on.
Maybe just ask him for a description of what he
Yeah,
means by
just
temporary
ask.
pool.
Okay.
And then you can go from there.
Okay. Sounds good. And I can email. This isn't a public hearing or anything. I can email you guys what he says, and you can let me know what kind of filing you want him to do.
Great.
Okay.
I have a couple of other things I'm kind of curious about. Along the rail trail where I guess it's called National Grid, where they put that stone in and then they were going to plant it.
Oh, yeah.
I see some plantings that have been done there. I don't know if that's the extent of it, or is it, it's kind of just gone, nobody's talked about it, but it looks like some work was done in there. And I don't know if we get in the final product or what. You might just check in with them.
Okay. Do you think that it looks like, I haven't been out there. Do you think it looks like it is not done? Like it needs more planting based on what they showed us?
They kind of described it. It kind of looked like the vegetation was going to be kind of intertwined with the stone.
Right.
What I see is a couple of like shrubs and things out there.
Yeah,
I'm not-
I walked by there today and I noticed that there's not much in there. Not what I was expecting.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think they have a lot more to do.
Okay.
They're going to raise the height of the rail trail itself quite a bit. So they're
Not
still
in that
working.
area. Not in
Oh,
that
not in
area.
that area? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, what I saw out there looked nice. I mean, shrubs and so forth. I mean, everything, even where the weeds were, it looked fine. But I'm just wondering what we're getting and if that's what it is.
All right, that's a good question. I will ask them if they can give us some sort of written update with photos and
Yeah,
let us know if this is their completed project or if they're waiting for certain other things to establish or be planted or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing I was wondering about, as far as we're in the process now of an city attorney checking into the whole business about the historical structures and so forth. Is that something that one of these days we'll hear about? Is there a schedule? Is somebody assigned it?
David, did you get those emails
Yeah, I did.
response from Andy about it? So I think what he was, at least the way I interpreted that, was that he did not want to approach the Copeland and Page legal staff now about it, because he's concerned essentially about what they might say or not say, because there's no project in front of them to make a concrete call one way or another, that Copeland and Page tends to give these very vague non-answers about things
I see.
that Andy thought could actually make it worse, and kind of confuse things for us, so that we should probably wait until we get the next project, and then when we have a very specific question, we'll take it to Copeland and Page.
That sounds fine to me.
That makes sense. It sounded, based on what he was saying, that we just might get a better result that way.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Was that the one, Steve?
Yeah. So Paul,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay,
All
I guess
right.
we're done.
All right.
Very good.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Here.
Good night, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Yeah.